This podcast is for entertainment, education, and inspirational purposes only. Nothing in this podcast is diagnostic or direct medical advice and does not establish a practitioner-patient relationship. Seek care from a highly trained medical provider for your healthcare concerns. Yinspired is dedicated to all the grandmothers, aunties, and mothers whose voices weren't heard or listened to. Created for the daughters. Aloha and welcome back to Yinspired, a podcast celebrating different perspectives in Chinese medicine and integrative medicine. Here, we have casual conversations with everyday practitioners, patients, and students exploring the messy truths of medicine, healing, the taboo, and life. I'm your host, Dr. Haunani Chong-Drake, a clinical doctor of acupuncture and Chinese medicine, a cultural practitioner and steward, mom, dog mama, and military spouse. Y'all, I'm so excited to introduce today's guest. Welcome, Dr. Yael Markowicz, to our podcast. She's a doctor of acupuncture and Chinese medicine, as well as a longtime friend. We think we figured out we've known each other since about 2010, give or take, because time is kind of a tricky thing for people like us. But it's so good to see you. It's been a very, very, very long time. And at the same time, in this last few minutes, we've just jumped on to this call, this conversation. It feels like no time has passed either. So welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to be on here with you. And I'm so proud of you for all that you've created and all that you're doing in this world. And yes, we've been on a call now for about 15 minutes and it feels like we've never had a day apart. So it's really wonderful, wonderful to be in your presence. So yes, my name is Dr. Yael Markowicz. I am currently located in Westchester, New York. And I'm also a doctor of Chinese medicine and acupuncture. I am also a mom of two. I have a 7-year-old and a 9-year-old. And I'm married to a surgeon. So I have a very interesting life. I have a lot of East and West in my periphery. And it actually is, I'm the one person that did not want to marry a doctor from the Western doctor, but I feel so grateful that I actually did because he really grounds me and he gives me a different perspective in my very mystical world. I tend to live out in the ether a lot of times, and it is good to be brought back down to reality. So that's also good. So yeah, I practice. I have a very busy practice in Westchester. I primarily focus on women's health, but I do have a wide array of patients from pediatric, which I'm starting to see a lot more now just because of our times and the amount of anxiety that's happening in the world. But then I also see my elderly orthods and everything in between. And I'm so honored every single day to be able to be practicing. And yeah, I'm honored.
Your light, everything that I remember about you is just only grown exponentially. So thank you for
Oh,
sharing your time with us. And I know that we can get into so many things. We used to practice yoga a lot in San Diego. We'd hang out at the beach, we'd study together. And then I went to New York, then I came back, then you went to New York and I think stayed there,
I
you know,
did. Yeah.
through this very organic movement. And I think people like you and me, we like to move, we like to travel, we like to see the world. So I'm just curious, coming into Chinese medicine and acupuncture, was that something you grow up with it? Was this always going to be your path?
Well, I definitely think this was always going to be my path. I think, and I truly feel with every cell in my body that this is my life's purpose. And I don't know if it's actually acupuncture and Chinese medicine that's my life's purpose. Those are definitely my biggest tools that I use. But I do feel like my life's purpose is to change the trajectory of health in this world, really. I don't even want to think small. I want to think large. So I bring you back to 2001. I graduated college and I always wanted to be pre-med, but then I started pre-med and I realized not for me. So I ended up studying philosophy and economics because I was really good in math and just kind of went through college, just whatever. But I grew up with a very strong father figure. who he is an artist. He's a violin maker. And so I spend my whole life kind of looking at him, and he was on a pedestal my whole childhood. And when I was about to graduate university, he basically said that he wouldn't be able to die a happy man unless he gave me his, if I could take on this ancient tradition of violin making and carry the torch. And so, of course, with the way that I saw him and my deep love for my father, I said, okay. And at that time, he was living in Italy and with my mother. And so I said, okay, I graduated university, I moved to Italy, and I started studying violin making. And while I was there, I met a couple of romantic friends, and one of which was he was a classical guitarist, but very much into yoga and meditation and shiatsu. And so I found myself really diving deep into this practice. And I would spend probably 80% of my time, whether it was during all night meditations or just going in and meditating throughout the day or taking yoga classes, studying Tai Chi, studying Qigong, studying Shiatsu. It was incredible. And it was incredible to do this in Italy. And so I really spent about 8 years living in Italy, diving into this beautiful Eastern practice and never really thinking too much of it, never knowing that this was going to actually be my life's purpose. But it felt so real. And while I was also doing that, I also started studying a little bit of homeopathy because homeopathy was such a big part of Eastern European, not Eastern, just, I'm sorry, European culture. I'm Eastern European, but it's also part of Eastern European culture. Cupping is, my dad was doing cupping when he was a child in Russia. But European culture, you will walk into a pharmacy and the majority of the products in there are homeopathic. And then I was learning about Bach flowers and I was learning about rebirthing and all of these things were coming up because the people that were frequenting my yoga studio were just all just like very incredible people that had so much to offer. And so I grew a very big love for this. After 8 years of working with my father, I realized this was not my life's purpose. I was good at what I was doing, but I just didn't, something felt wrong. Something felt like it was dying inside of me. And so I had to do the hardest thing that I could ever do and tell my father, I have to go. I have to find my way. And I moved to Seattle, Washington for 6 months and I was on my own completely. I left with maybe $20 to my name and I worked at an organic cafe and I couldn't have been happier. And I Googled, all the things that I was so passionate about, Tai Chi, Qigong, Shiatsu, yoga, meditation, and everything. And a bunch of schools for acupuncture came up. And I have to say and be honest, I had never had acupuncture. I didn't even really understand what it was at that time. And so this is 2008. And in 1 year, because I entered PCOM, Pacific College of Oriental Medicine, as it used to be called. It has changed currently, but it used to be called Pacific College of Oriental Medicine. And I found that school and I had this calling that I needed to return back to New York. I don't know what it was. Fate really takes me to places. I do trust that the universe guides me constantly. And I won a scholarship. I entered PCOM. I got in. My essay won a scholarship. I won all my books for free for that first year. It was literally green light after green light. Now, also, I suffered from, I call it polycystic ovarian syndrome. When I was 18 years old, I had a major incident where I had a 3 inch by 3 inch cyst on my ovary. And I went to the doctor and he said, and I didn't have a period for an entire year at that time. And he said, you have to go on birth control pills and we have to shrink this cyst. And chances are you might not be able to have children. And it was a big shock to me at 18 years old. And so I was on birth control pills for 11 years and I finally had gotten off of it right when I was going into PCOM for the first time. And so the most miraculous thing happened. I had no experience with acupuncture. I got into this school and I started getting treated 3 times a week for my what I thought was polycystic ovarian syndrome. And it might have been, but later in life, I've learned that the testing that they used to determine whether it was polycystic ovarian syndrome was, you can't use an ultrasound because it could just be that you were on birth control pills for 11 years that caused all the multi-cysts. Anyway, through Chinese medicine within 1 year, I was completely regulated. My whole body was functioning better. And that's when my real mission of studying women's health was born, because I never wanted any other woman or young girl to ever have to go through this again, because there are so little answers when you go to Western medicine. They have so little tools to give you when it comes to anything gynecological. And I made a pact with myself that this was never going to happen to anybody that I come in contact with. That I want to help. I want to help everybody. So then that's it. I studied. I was the Hermione in school. I was just in Universal Studios, and I had a flashback because everybody used to call me Hermione. I had my hand raised for the entire 4.5 years I was in school. I had never been a great student, and all of a sudden, now I'm straight A's. I'm the top of my class. I'm loving every second, and, it's kind of been a roller coaster ever since. I graduated in 2013. I took some extra time because I also became a doula while I was in school, and I became a massage therapist while I was in school, and a yoga teacher while I was in school. So it prolonged it a little bit. And then, yeah, and I've been in private practice ever since. I took a little bit of a break to have 2 kids, and, that's it. Yeah, that's my story of how I got into
Thank you so much for sharing, and I know that what we can share in time like this is kind of like the glossed over version, but from what you've shared, I learned some things about you, and I didn't realize how parallel our lives were in so many
Wow,
ways, especially engaging in all of these community-based, holistic healing, mind-altering. You're like, People live like this? Well, what's going on?" That was happening to me too at the exact same time. And I
amazing.
was in Seattle too. I wasn't living there at the time, but I happened to be in Seattle when I felt like this calling to figure out what is this next step. I was sitting at Green Lake meditating, my version of meditating, which is like a million thoughts going, but I'm gonna sit there, look like I'm meditating. And in a moment of clarity, the term Chinese medicine came through and my eyes bolted open. Sunbeam was hitting Green Lake right in front of me. I just started to cry. I ran to my car, drove home, dialed up, like on the internet, typed in this thing, Chinese medicine, and that was it. Like the rest was history. And so the timing of when you're sharing it, it just brought me back into my own memory of that too. And how we were literally paralleling and then in the same city when that calling happened. I didn't
That's
know that.
amazing. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
amazing.
And so, yeah, and lucky for us, we did get to interact both at the school level and then I've watched your journey, the professional, seeing you grow and move. And one of the things that has always stuck out to me is one, your presence. I mean, you've always, you're just a ball of light. I know this will probably come out in audio, but if people get to meet you, they'll know what I'm saying is like you do come from this place of radiance and radiating that light, and just being you ends up being such a big part of, I think, how people then relate and respond. But at a time like this, we were talking about this offline, is like, how do you maintain that presence or that focus or that radiance when it feels like life is so messy right now, right? And
So
what's your trick?
messy.
What are you doing these days?
Yeah, so I definitely struggle in the world that we're living at right now, and as I was saying to you, I feel so strongly this yin and yang feeling of I want to be so hopeful and I want to be so much in that light, but I feel like there's so much dark and we're at a crossroads. And we are this is such a powerful, beautiful moment that we are living in, that we get to live in in this moment right now where such shift can happen, but it has to be a collective, and if the collective chooses to not and to stay where we are, then I just don't see a bright future. But if, and only if, we can somehow create this major community to shine the light, to be that, you know, so I'm Israeli, and so Hanukkah is a beautiful holiday for us Jews, right? It, it's you take a candle and you use that candle to light all the other candles of this beautiful menorah to shed to be as bright of a light as it can be, right? The meaning behind the religious aspect I'm not really that interested in. I'm more interested in the light. I'm more interested in being the light. And the way I see us as each human being is that that shamash, that candle that lights, and I meet you and I light you, and then you meet the other person and and then we just spread that light. And so back to my heritage of being Israeli, I've been so passionate. It's been 15 years of my dreaming, but only in the recent maybe 3 years I'm beginning to birth my wellness center, which is called Yala Wellness. So Yala, YLA. It's normally spelled with 2 L's, but I'm keeping one of those L's for love. But you are loved always. And I have a mission, and this is what keeps me going. I I feel so strongly that when we build this community, when we build this light, that we can make such big shifts. And so that keeps my hope alive and that keeps my desire to keep going alive, that this is going to happen. I have no doubt that this will happen. We're going to build a community of light and we're going to start. So you are loved always. And why did I come up with that? Yalla, right? Yalla, you are loved always. Because if I can somehow show you how incredible you are, each and every single one of you is so amazing and beautiful and unique. If you can find that love for yourself, if you can find love for yourself, you will then change the way you treat your body. You will then change the way you treat others. You will change the way you live, and by doing that, you will be setting an example for your family and for their family. And we can then start to spread the light and change the trajectory of health and life. And maybe the goal is that everybody starts thriving, right? Like that's really my goal is to see everybody thriving. Nobody needs to really be ill and sick. We just need to change things. We live in such a powerful time with so much technology, but we're using the technology to hurt us rather than to help us. And so we just need to change that. That's what keeps me going during this very chaotic, difficult, loud time that we're living in is this hope that everything is going to shift and that we're going to move into the age of Aquarius, this age of love rather than fighting, rather than this separation that will connect and unite and create a big community. And maybe it'll start in one little area, but I'm hoping that that one little area is that shamash and that that little area will then spread and spread and then maybe onwards, not even just in the United States, but all over the world. So that's my mission.
Wonderful one that I can wholeheartedly get behind and enable and cheerlead you all day, every day, because I have a very similar one and how we start is very small, right? I know the vision you have to build a huge community wellness space in New York City, right? That's gotta be
Yeah,
some serious earth level challenges in terms of just the logistics of it,
it
but
is. Yeah,
you've seen it happen. I mean, in San Diego, those wellness centers that you dream of are kind of everywhere in Southern California, right? It's like, why in certain areas of the globe is that just common and like baked into the fabric of those cities? And then in other areas, it's not. Have you thought
right.
about that or
Well,
reflected on
I
that?
have. I have very often thought of that, and I wonder if it's just the amount of water that they're surrounded by. Maybe it's the water, maybe it's the amount of sunshine. Maybe that's like that really does impact how people live, and maybe the simplicity of life in certain areas allows for that to happen. New York is very challenging. I'm gonna say if it can be done in New York, it can be done anywhere, right? So that's yeah, but it is very interesting how in Florida too, you see um a lot more pockets of healing rather than in comparison to middle America or, you know, even New York. But it is interesting because California doesn't have any more water than New York. I mean, it's the same, but it's different. The sun.
Yeah.
I think it's the sun.
It might be, yeah, it might be the sun. Not that one is better than the other either, because I remember
No, yeah.
leaving San Diego for New York, and I felt such relief as a student because the environment in San Diego was just so kind of like, "Yeah, we'll make it to class, so go with the flow," and I was like you, like, hands up, taking notes, studious, like, "I'm here to learn this stuff," you know? And so I wanted other people to be as serious as I was, and you can't force that, but when I got to New York, I was like, "These are my peeps, everyone's taking notes, everyone's showing up to class, everyone knows the answers," like, "This is great."
You do
So
have a little bit of that New York edge to you. You
really?
have a little New York to you for sure.
I don't think anyone's ever said that, but I will take it. Thank you very much. It took me a while to really find my groove there, but I have a very distinct moment where I realized, "Oh,
Mhm.
this is why people love it." Um,
For sure.
so there's definitely a part of that in
Yeah,
me.
there's positive things in everywhere you go, right? And just that there's it's just different energy. But for sure, New York has a lot of room to grow when it comes to taking good care of themselves. And I just think it's a faster pace, and that fast pace really messes with your entire nervous system. And once, I remember studying in school, the first thing I ever learned in school when we were sitting there learning about yin and yang was you know, when you're treating a patient, it's always about peeling the onion. And in New York, right, when I was in California, I was actually able to see disorders a lot more clearly. In New York, they're very masked by this liver chi stagnation, this stress that people are holding on to just from being in New York. There's nothing else besides for just being in New York. And then with every patient, it's almost like you have to give it time to clear that, to allow their nervous systems to chill out for a little bit before you could actually even diagnose them with anything because it's that New York, there's something about New York. And it is that fast pace, but at the same time, that fast pace is so exciting too. So you have, pros and cons, right?
Yeah,
Of all of it.
it's very yang energy for sure, like, "Go, go,
Very.
go, never sleep." Is that isn't that its motto, like, "The city that never sleeps," or is that Vegas? I
It
think that's
is.
Ve Oh, it is?
Well,
New York? Maybe both. They can both get
I don't
credit.
know. I think it is New York. It is. I think Frank Sinatra sang it, didn't he? The city that never sleeps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I had never experienced insomnia in my life. I sleep. I'm a sleeper. I love my sleep, and it wasn't until I was in New York for school, I fully experienced insomnia without I was still meditating all the time. I was doing my yoga practice all the time. I was living a very as mindful of a life I could while you're in a master's program for acupuncture and Chinese medicine, which sounds paradoxical if you know what I mean. Like, if you know, you know. But I could not sleep, and I remember going into clinic, and my supervisor was just like, "Well, welcome to New York." I was like,
Yeah.
"Wait, is what?" And that was the
Yep.
first talk about you don't know until you know. I was like, "Oh, the people who are coming into my clinic with insomnia or sleep issues, I would have never been able to relate to them ever."
Yeah, you almost have to
And
live it to be able to understand what it is. But you also have to live in California to understand that too. It's such a special vibe, right? Like, and I'm so grateful for the time that I spent there because I would have never known there's something so special about just going with the flow and just, being forced. As a New Yorker, it was so hard for me. I remember, we just moved to San Diego. It was me and a couple of my friends. We moved out together from the cohort, and we were in Target, and we needed to buy bedding for this like new apartment that we were renting to start school. We were starting school in a couple of days. And we had to get everything, and I remember standing in line, and I remember the person in front of me started a conversation with the cashier, and I almost lost my mind because they were talking for about 15 minutes without any concern that there was a massive line of people waiting to check out. Nothing at all. And nobody was getting frustrated. Nobody was getting upset. And my blood was boiling. I was like, come on, what's going on? And that New Yorker energy, right? It's intense.
you're, like, honking the invisible horn, like, "Come on, beep,
Oh my
beep."
god, my head, the amount of I'm very zen and I'm very calm, but I'm also a Gemini. And so sometimes, I love to curse sometimes. So my brain just started cursing. Come on. What's going on? Yeah, it's funny. There's that duality of you know, my essence and my being should be more is suited more for California, but then there's that New York essence that just, you can take the girl out of New York, but you can't take the New York out of the girl.
I love that, I love that, and also that's so fitting when we talk about yin yang, right? And, like, the Gemini, the
for sure.
opposition, but transforming into each other. I mean, it really is representative in so many ways, just there in your, your birth chart, your blueprint, as I like to call it. Um,
For sure.
yeah. So, okay, so everyone listening, envision this wellness center in New York City that Dr. Yael is going to
Westchester.
bring. Westchester. Yeah, let's be specific. Westchester.
Westchester.
Westchester. Well, I hold that, and so do anyone listening. We will hold that for you, and so hope that
Thank you.
someday in the future you can come back and we can talk about it as a something that is now birthing into the world, if that is meant to be.
Deal. Deal.
Yeah,
I'm happy to do that.
yeah. So, can I ask you, one of the things that I originally reached out to you about specifically to come on Yinspired was back in the day, I don't even know how long ago, you and someone, hopefully you'll know this person, co-created a Facebook group called AcuMamas,
Yes.
right?
Yes. And her name is Robin.
You two created a Facebook group called AcuMamas. And for those of you who don't know what that is or it sounds too cryptic, it literally was a Facebook group for licensed acupuncturists who were also mothers, right?
Yep.
I don't
Yep.
know if you
And it
know
was really
this.
special.
Yeah, well, and it still exists technically.
Tell me.
I
Yeah.
don't know if you know
Yeah.
this. That was a lifeline. When I had my 2
Really.
babies, yeah, when I had my 2 babies, I was still in that mindset of like, you graduate and you gotta start a practice, you gotta start a practice. Well, what they don't tell you is starting a practice is like having a baby. So if you're trying to start a practice and have a baby at the same time, you're birthing twins without realizing it, and your world falls apart very quickly because you only have so much chi, you only have so much time in a day, you only have like you're raising 2 babies, but 2 very different babies. And so that Facebook group became a lifeline for me. Silently, when, you're breastfeeding and scrolling or whatever your version is, that was mine. I was like, "Oh, there's other moms out there doing this." Because at the time, I didn't have any role models. I didn't see that at school. It wasn't talked about at school. Like, "Oh, by the way, if you plan on being a mom and run a practice or start a practice," no conversation at all, even though there were several of our friends who were pregnant and going through school, but it was kind of like it wasn't talked about. So I am so curious, like, what was the impetus for that? Where did that come
So
from?
Robin Meza, she's amazing. She now lives in Vermont. We met and it was an instant connection at school. You talk about being a bright light. She's definitely a bright light. And she had her son before I had children, before I was even married. And it was actually her idea. She said, I wish that there was something that we could have for moms that are trying to run a practice and just trying to navigate and just trying to get some answers from our fellow colleagues on, do we vaccinate, do we not vaccinate, do we, what sleep schedule, how do you do, what do you do when your child has a cold, what herbs do you give them, do you give them herbs, you do acupuncture on your kids. And she reached out to me and and so we both just, I thought it was an incredible idea, and so we just kind of did it together. But it was definitely her initiative, because she was struggling, and I think it was birthed out of her own struggle of just wanting to do the right thing and wanting to find the right answers, which is how most things are birthed out of necessity, right? I And so, yeah, and it actually was such an important part of my early motherhood days. I haven't checked that site in a long time, but, um, early on, I mean, I remember asking about, "What do I do? My child's not sleeping. What do I do? There's reflux. What do you do? What probiotic do you give?" And it was really special. It was great, and we wanted to make sure it was only for acupuncturists that were mothers. We didn't want anybody else on there because, as we said earlier, it's if you know, you know, and you just have to be a mom to fully understand. So the thing I think is really special about being an acupuncturist is that it's not just a career. It's literally who you are. There are some people that just do it as a career, and that's totally fine as well. But if you're really in it, if this is really your life's purpose, you don't stop being an acupuncturist. Even if you're not working, you're not treating patients, you're still embodying Chinese medicine. It's who you are. So being a mother and an acupuncturist and fully embodying this idea of Chinese medicine and the belief systems that you have that align with Chinese medicine. For example, the 40 days postpartum and making sure you're building your blood and making sure your children aren't eating too much damp foods and too much there's so much in it that being a mother and an acupuncturist is it's very different. It's a very different, because you yes, you have the pediatrician, but at the same time, you have so many different belief systems that carry you on. I mean, I was doing acupuncture with my daughter when she was just a few months old. I think the picture that we posted on the site is my daughter getting needled by Moshe's clinic. Uh, Moshe Heller, who is an incredible pediatric acupuncturist. And I would drive my daughter every week and he would treat her. And it was, yeah, that was the picture. But yes, I'm so glad that to hear that it was your lifeline. I'm so glad to hear because we don't know, right? We put it up and you don't actually know what an impact certain things have. And that was exactly the point. So I'm so thrilled to hear that.
Yeah, it was like you said, there is this unique way of seeing the world once you go through a program like Chinese medicine and acupuncture, where it's not just something you study so that you can have a job. It's really hard to not transform and change yourself as you go through a program like that. And so to have conversations about one, even your what I actually found even more helpful, not just about my kids. Maybe this shows what type of mom I am. I was like, "What about me? What do I do as a mom? Like, what about my sleep? And what are you doing? How are you running a practice and seeing patients and getting a call from your spouse or daycare or someone being like, 'Your kid's sick, you gotta leave.' And you have a whole day or several bookings." Like, even something that basic, it was pulling at my heartstrings because, yes, of course I love my child. Of course I'm gonna go pick them up, and also feeling this deep, deep guilt that I'm now having to cancel these appointments that
Because
maybe
that's your
they
other
didn't.
child.
Yeah, it
That's your
is
other
to
child.
start a clinic and a practice is like birthing a child, like I said. It was so challenging for me, and I felt like I was dropping all the plates, which I think is normal just being, a new mom, period, but then add that to my own expectations or ideas or dreams that were falling very quickly, expectation management, but it became a lifeline to be in community with others who I'd never met before. I knew some of them, some of our friends that we know, but also to just remember like, "Oh, you're not alone. This is hard. It's actually harder than you imagined and no one talked about this. So you're right where you're supposed to be." And so even though it's not technically like a mentorship program, in many ways it had that same vibe of community, of we've got each other, we've got this, you can do this. And then also some of the truth telling in there of, yeah, this is hard. Why are we doing this to ourselves? Why don't we just take some time off if we can? And the reality is sometimes you can't. Like that's your bread and butter. That's how you're going to pay for the lights to stay on. And how do we support each other in that way? So it was really powerful, and I've always wanted to know, like, where did that come from?
That's amazing. I'll definitely, tell Robin. Hopefully she'll listen to this podcast, but yeah, that means so much to know that it had such an impact, and if it had an impact on you, then it I'm sure had an impact to many others, which is great. We should actually go back onto that. I'm gonna go back on.
I check it I'm not on Facebook much, but the few groups, the Chinese medicine groups that I am a part of, or acupuncture groups, are the only reason why I log in, and every once in a while, I'll check it out. I'll see what other people are
Is it
posting.
is it
But people are
still is
Oh,
it
yeah,
still
people
going?
post. Yeah, people
Oh,
post.
okay, great. Oh,
Yeah.
that's so great.
Yeah,
That's
I wouldn't say
awesome.
it's as active, but I think that is reflective of also maybe when that group started and we've all matured, our kids aren't so young anymore. I mean, there's still
Right.
relevant questions, but yeah. And I guess what I'm also saying too is just kind of showing the power of an idea. I get the sense you're an ideas person, and mostly because you can tap into community need and seeing what is not only needed, but also felt at that heart level. And like what
Thanks.
just an idea, you plant an idea, you plant a seed
So
and watch it
my,
grow.
what is it? Designs,
Human design?
it's human designs. I'm a manifester. So I have a streamline. I just don't always I need my Robin or I need my other person to actually like push me to do something. But yeah, thank you for saying that.
That's actually makes perfect sense, and we have not had anyone talk about human design, but
Ugh, I
aunt
love human
my aunt
design.
is, like, an expert in it, so that's making me realize I need to reach out and really nurture that invitation because
Yeah. Oh, I
you're
need to
not the
talk to
only
your
one. It
aunt.
comes up a lot in these conversations where people, identify their human design, and
Well, you know what I love about human design? I'm also really big into astrology as well. And I do believe that we have no idea what's actually going on around us. And, there's so much more out there that we have no idea. But what I love about human designs is that it takes into account so many different perspectives. It takes in the I Ching, it takes in astrology, it takes in all these different beautiful, esoteric, energetic belief systems that you really get a good understanding of what your soul and your purpose in this lifetime is, right? It's just it to me it's the most descriptive, I think. I mean, astrology is amazing too if you really dive deep into it and you really understand not just your sun sign and your moon sign or your right, but if you really dive deep into it and understand the houses and understand the planets and the alignments, it's pretty remarkable as well. Yeah, human design. That's if I have another in my next life, that's what I'm going to focus on.
but that's so funny you say that because I've had to take classes, actually forced to take classes for, Ayurveda. It was a requirement to take a Jyotish class, which is wisdom science of light, which is their version of astrology. And, like you said, when you came to Chinese medicine school, all of a sudden you're like, I get this. I'm a student. I'm all in. Your brain, like everything's in alignment and you're taking it in. I feel the same way about Chinese medicine and also Ayurveda, and it was the one class that class, Jyotish, where I sat there, I literally threw my pen. I was like, crossed my arms, sat back in my chair because it was like breaking my brain, like breaking me in ways I couldn't comprehend. I'd never experienced this. I can usually grasp things when they're new, and pretty once I grasp them, then it kind of snowballs and it's easier. Jyotish, astrology, broke my mind. Came back, told my friend, she's like, "Well, why don't you look into Western astrology?" Same thing, broke my mind. It's like my brain cannot comprehend it, and at the same time, energetically, I'm like, "Yes." It's a big yes, but in this lifetime, it's not where my focus is, but I used to always say that, "Next lifetime, next
Next
lifetime, I'll do
lifetime.
that."
I know. Oh
But
my
be careful
god.
how many things I've said that about. I'm gonna be coming around a lot longer. I don't know. We'll have to renegotiate these terms. We'll see how this
Oh
year goes.
man.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you brought that up. So where you're at now, right? You've been in practice for what did you say, 15 years?
Almost. I mean, I would say, like, really in practice for let's call it 13 years.
Oh, you had to take a break for the kiddos. Well, that's a practice,
Yeah,
a
so
different type of practice.
yes.
Yeah, you're in Westchester. We have so many different ways of practicing, right? Like we go to school, we even graduated from the same program, but then we fall into these specialties and we fall into different ways of not only just engaging with our patients, but even our needle technique. I don't think a lot of people know that, right? Like there's different needle technique and there's different ways of approaching this medicine. I'm just curious, where has your path, your evolution, what does your practice look like these days and what's really calling to your heart?
So it's really interesting. When I first started practicing, I was primarily women's health, and I did a fellowship at Lutheran Hospital, which is now NYU Lutheran in Brooklyn. And I worked with Claudia Sitkovitz, and I spent 2.5 years with her as her like right hand person, along with some other amazing women, and helped create some research papers on the efficacy of acupuncture during labor. And we were really, I mean, it was hard work, and it was one of the most rewarding things that I've ever done. And so we were the acu doulas, because a lot of times when you're in the hospital setting, a lot of it is doula work, and we were all doulas. So we were acupuncturists, we were doulas, and we were working in the hospital setting. It was amazing. And so when I was done with that, really focused on fertility, pregnancy, postpartum. That was my main focus. And I did a little bit of everything else. I never say no to a patient because I truly believe that our medicine can treat almost anything because once you get blood flow and once you get chi flow and once you start to allow your body to function the way it wants to function without creating too much dampness from food or from stress or which can be translated into inflammation. Right, if you give your body the right messages from the external world and from your mind, because your mind is such a powerful part of all of this too, right? Your thoughts and your belief systems, you can really, I think, personally treat almost anything. Don't come to me if you broke your bone. Go to my husband, right? Like don't come to me. I'm not going to be able to, and I could. It would just take too long and you won't like me for it. But right, because but even there, even in bone mending, even in all of these acute orthopedic situations, we do have tools. But if you think about most any condition that is chronic, which is what most people are suffering with, like I would say 80% of people are suffering with chronic illness, Chinese medicine has such amazing value, right? So I try never to say no. But my passion was always women's health. And then I had children. And I remember coming back after maternity leave and saying to my patients, I am so sorry. I am sorry for everything that I said to you that I thought I knew and I thought I understood. I'm so sorry for just telling you to eat those dates and move your hips because and everything's going to be okay. You know, I really truly fully embraced and understood what it means, right? And so I think in my practice in general, again, I embody this medicine. So every experience that I have, I truly take it on and I take it on as a lesson and a learning experience, right? Like I went to Peru and did 6 sessions of ayahuasca to learn, and to learn about plant medicine, to fully understand it. And I take that experience with me and I put it into my practice. I take my motherhood experience, I birthed 2 children with no medication that, naturally. And I take that into my practice. Every time I'm sick, every time I fall, every time I get a cut or a bruise or anything, I take that into my practice. And so, and as well as anybody in my family who's sick, I take that as a learning experience. So my practice has evolved really into treating a lot of just chronic issues, chronic illness, whether it's chronic pain, whether it's autoimmune, whether it's, and I think fertility issues is autoimmune. I look at it as autoimmune. I don't look at it as anything else except for your body's fighting you for something that we can fix, that we can balance, we can make sure that your body works well. And there's something keeping your body from functioning the way it wants to function, right? So that to me is what autoimmune is. And so I've developed this passion for really just treating anything. And I'm seeing again, as I said, I see a lot of pediatric now for anxiety, and a lot of that is just teaching them breath work. And I do some little tools on them, the shin on them. I and then I also have my elderly that come in. I have my Parkinson's guy who, comes in grumpy and walks out happy. I've moved my practice into not really defining a thing that I do. It's really just a medicine of finding inner balance and truly balancing mind, body, soul. I have some patients where they've stopped seeing their therapists because that's what we do. Because if I don't treat what's going on in your mind and I don't treat all the discomfort that you're having in your soul and in your heart and in your mind, then I can't really treat your body, right? And once we really dive deep into why are you sad and, let's talk about that grief. Let's get it out, cry. I love it when my patients cry. It's the best feeling in the world. When they cry, I'm like, score. I did what I needed to do. And even my own therapy, right? I've gone to therapy myself and I've worked on my own parts and I've worked on my own childhood traumas. And I take that too. And then I start incorporating that into the practice as well. And as far as needle technique, I've thought about that recently. It's so interesting. I treat I'm an intuitive treater, right? So a lot of times I have no idea what I'm doing. And a lot of times I have no idea what I'm saying. It just comes and I don't fully understand it until maybe afterwards. But even with needle technique, a lot of times I'll just close my eyes and I'll put my hand there and it'll just happen. And I don't quite know. It's not something I can teach. It's one of those things I've thought about that. Like if I wanted to teach somebody what I actually do, I'm not sure I can, you know? And I call on my ancestors. I loved your introduction because I call on my grandmother all the time, my daughter's namesake. And I ask there was one person who came into my office one time a long time ago who was like a feng shui master and he really felt energies and he walked in, he's like, "Whoa, you have a lot of people hanging out in here," It just because I believe that that's part of the medicine as well, just calling our ancestors and there's our bodies are just so unbelievably miraculous, and I don't think even understand 10% of what is actually happening in our bodies, the miracle of life and the miracle that's happening within us. And I think that once you quiet down and try not to be too complicated, then that's where the answer actually comes in. And you know, Dr. Tan, I think, used to say, it doesn't matter what you do. If your intention is if you have a certain intention, that is what's going to come through to your patients. And as long as you hold them and you're really feeling their pulse and you're really connecting with them in a very deep way, and you set your intention, you can do the exact same needling combination on 15 different people and they will each get better. So, you know, I kinda carry that with me a little bit sometimes. I don't do the same needle prescription on every patient, but and I do put a lot of thought into it, but the majority of it is intuitive. So the needle technique as well, it just kinda happens, you know? If I'm trying to treat excess or deficiency, it just kind of happens.
Really refreshing to hear that because on so many levels, there's so many things I want to follow up, but it's really refreshing to hear that you had a focus, but naturally you continue to open yourself up, which is almost counterintuitive to what, you know, business advice or marketing advice would tell you. But I'm so glad you said that because it does give an example for those who are listening who are like, but that doesn't make sense to me. This idea of niching down or finding a specialty, it helps. It helps at the beginning, it can help at different times of your career. But as you've noticed or as you've experienced, you have the capacity in the way that you practice that it actually made more sense to broaden rather than to narrow down. And that naturally seems to be what's coming to you also, right? Is this
For sure, and I think that it's definitely for anybody who's listening, it is if you find that there's one topic that really intrigues you the most, right? You wanna stick with orthopedics, and that is just what you wanna do, and I think that's wonderful, really excel in that. But the beautiful thing about Chinese medicine is that it was never really designed to be a specialty type of a medicine because of how incredibly powerful it is with herbs and with needles, and you really can treat such a wide range of conditions. I think that trying to put little subcategories and subspecialties it's trying to take something that is so powerful and kind of actually bring it down into the Western, the words aren't coming to me, but
kind of like a
the
specialization?
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a very Western medicine type of, thought process, I think, right? Because they are just treating that part, and they have to learn that subspecialty because the medications that they prescribe are specifically for that one thing. But as anybody who practices Chinese medicine knows, there are 7 different types of headaches, and there's different types of dampness and there's different types of qi stagnation. And you could have counterflow stomach qi, you could have counterflow liver qi, you could have counterflow lung qi. And so in just those 3 seconds that I spoke, I just named 15 different diagnoses, right? That are completely different spectrums of specialties. So, that's how I see it.
Yeah, and what I hear you saying in that too is when we limit ourselves, we sometimes narrow the medicine itself. and it doesn't stay that whole when we say holistic in Chinese medicine, we're not just talking body, mind, spirit, we're also talking about holistic assessment, holistic
Right.
treatment plans, holistic on all the levels of the medical processes. Sorry, were you gonna say something?
I was just going to say one more thing. And I want to even say within the subspecialties of Chinese medicine, it's never just a subspecialty. It's not, it can't be because of the questions that we ask. And let's say I have a patient coming in for fertility, but they also have back pain and they also have digestive issues and they're waking up in the middle of the night urinating and they have headaches and they get migraines. How can you subspecialize, right? Yes, my subspecialty is fertility, but I think that that's just okay. So your subspecialty is a population. It's a small. You're decreasing your population size by just getting women that are pregnant or trying to get pregnant, or just had a baby. But within that, you truly are practicing Chinese medicine and truly practicing the very wide, diverse spectrum of what we can treat. Because you really have to treat everything. You
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, yeah, and, we haven't had many conversations. We've had quite a few guests talk about, acupuncture and Chinese medicine around birth and prenatal and postpartum, but you brought up something that we hadn't really touched on. I don't know why we haven't touched on it, kind of feels like a duh moment and, as a host right now, but you talked about how it's so good for mental health. You have people who are choosing they were seeing a therapist and seeing you, and now they're seeing you. Like, this is such an important part of the paradigm and how Chinese medicine views a person is that what we think and those emotions that we carry with us or shove away or ignore make a direct impact on the physical body and vice versa.
Your thoughts are the beginning of a manifestation of your body. So your belief system, and the way you see yourself, and the way you even and it goes down. Your thoughts are so powerful that if you are eating something, let's say that it's not good for, let's say soda, for example. Let's say you decide to drink a cup of soda and you, of Coca-Cola, for example, and you're drinking your soda and you're thinking the whole time, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm doing this. I'm going to feel so horrible. This is really bad for me. Oh my gosh, but I hate myself for doing this. Oh, I'm such an idiot. Why am I doing this? In comparison to if you take that soda and you're drinking it and you're like, you know what? It's okay. I feel like my body can handle this right now and I feel at ease with myself. And I'm making this decision for my body. I know it's not the right one, but it's okay because this is what my body needs right this second. And it doesn't mean that I will forever and always be drinking soda. I just wanted one right now and I'm fulfilling that desire and I'm going to move on. That soda will affect you differently in both of those scenarios, and it'll have a different cascade of hormones that are released. Your cortisol levels won't be as impacted. Your insulin spike might not be as high. It just affects you, and it just shows that your mind, what you think and how you believe in yourself, which goes back to my mission in life, right? If we can make each person just love themselves and treat themselves with care and love and respect, mental illness can really change. Mental illness can really, really change. We are bombarded from social media, from the stresses of life, from loss, from abandonment, from I find there's a book that Oprah Winfrey wrote, and it was What Happened to You, right? It's never what's wrong with you. Never. Because every single thing that happened from when you were in your mother's womb, it doesn't necessarily have to be from when you were born. From the moment you were conceived into a cell, what happened to you is what will decide your health. It'll decide your well being. It'll decide your mental health. It'll decide everything for you, right? And so that's been one of the most impactful books I've ever read was Oprah Winfrey's "What Happened to You." I think it's a good read for anybody if they're interested in mental health at all. But I don't know how much time we have, but I do want to say this one part of this book. Oprah Winfrey wrote this book with her psychiatrist friend, and he had a patient, a young African American girl who her mother was maybe 15 when she had, I don't know, a young mom. They had nothing. They had no money. They didn't have any means. But the mom wanted to show her love for her daughter. And the only way she knew how to show love for her daughter was to give her candy or to give her sugar. This very little girl developed diabetes, and there were a couple of things that happened in her life that were horrible, but one of which was when she was maybe an early teenager, she was with her friends, and there was a drive-by shooting, and one of her very good friends was killed in the drive-by shooting. They were sitting on a bench. I might be butchering this story, but you'll get the gist of it. The girl was shot, her friend was shot and was killed. And then a little while after that, the girl ended up in the hospital because of something that related to her diabetes. Not quite sure what it was. While in the hospital, with her diet monitored and everything, you know, looked at, she was controlled and monitored. They noticed that her blood sugar would rise a couple of times a day. And so all the doctors and all the nurses were convinced that her mother was sneaking in candy and bringing her candy. They couldn't understand what was going on. They couldn't understand why this little girl kept on having these horrific spikes of sugar, of insulin. I hope I'm not butchering it too much. What they realized was the trauma from the sirens in the hospital. Every time the sirens would go off, it would create a response in her body, and her cortisol levels would rise, her insulin levels would rise, because we forget sometimes, but a traumatic experience or stress can impact your body just like sugar, right? It's almost the same. And so this girl was having these horrific memories throughout the day of or traumatic moments throughout the day every time she heard a siren, because the sirens took her best friend away or a friend away, right? So we forget that. And so yeah, it all starts in your mind. Can you believe the amount of uh, chemical imbalances that could happen from an emotion, right? So it's very powerful. It's very powerful. And I think that we need to spend a lot more time thinking about our belief systems and our thought processes and how we see ourselves and how we see our bodies and how we feel in our relationships and how we feel in our families, right? It's all so important. I think maybe the most important, second to all gut health relation. Food to me, nutrition is top top right there with that.
Yeah, they go so hand in hand. And that really piggybacks one of the things that I say on this podcast all the time when it comes to food and diet is and I actually got this more from my Ayurveda training and background. We used to talk about not just what to eat, because that's what a lot of people focus on in terms of diet is what to eat. They want the macros, they want the diet list, the food list, what should I eat, what should I avoid, and keep it at that. But it's much more than that. It's not just what we eat, but more importantly, is how we eat, and that's what you're speaking to, and when. The third one is when. So what, how, and when, but how and when are 2/3. It's a bigger portion of that
Mhm.
pie per se, and those are things that are mindset and ritual or mindset and routine, and so that it comes full circle to what you're saying is, like, our state of mind influences our physical health in ways that if you are trained in this type of paradigm makes perfect sense, right? You know. But also for those who don't know, now you do know that when you see licensed acupuncturist, we are trained in a complete system of medicine that really understands this interconnection between our thoughts
Yeah,
and our body
for
going
sure.
back to our thoughts. It's not just emotion, it's not just mental health, it's heart health, meaning like your spiritual health. How do you feel? Right?
So important. And that is that is really, I think, what distinguishes between Eastern and Western medicine. This idea of how important emotion is, how important thoughts are, how important your belief systems are in relation to your health, right? There's so many other factors, yes, but if you don't look at that, you're missing such a big part of what it means to be human. And so,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
I totally forgot about this until you were talking. Back in, I wanna say 2012, I had someone reach out to me because they were gonna write a diet book, and they wanted me to be a contributor, and they said, "If you contributed to this book, what would your chapter be?" And I was like, "Honestly, you know me." This person knew me quite well, and I said, "It's gonna be nothing to do with food or diet, and it's gonna be about self-love." And he goes, "Well, no, 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 we're gonna do a diet lifestyle book. What chapter would you what would your focus be on?" And I said, "Self-love." And it just ended the conversation. He just didn't even know how to fit that into the puzzle,
Right.
but I completely forgot about that until just now. I never
And it's
wrote that
so
chapter for that book.
important. And I wish you did because that is such a major part of what it means to eat healthy and be healthy, right? If you have that self love, you're going to make better choices in your food and you're going to be more invested in what you're putting in your body, but also you're going to be kinder to yourself while you're eating your food and how you're digesting your food, right? And it's a shame that they that person didn't see the value in what you were saying, but it's so true.
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad that this is where the conversation went. I know time is running out. I like to end the conversation with rapid fire, but also an opportunity for you to share where people can connect with you.
Sure.
Do you have time for that, or do you need to jump off?
Yeah,
Because I
yeah,
also
yeah.
want to
No, no, no.
respect. Okay.
No, 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 for
So
sure.
so if people want to reach out to you and connect with you, what's the best way for them to do that? And I'll make sure it's in the show notes, all these links.
Yeah. So everything that is related to my practice currently is under Yael Acu Wellness. So it's YaelAcuWellness. So it's YaelAcuWellness.com. It's Yael Acu Wellness on Instagram. And definitely go onto Instagram. I post a lot of really fun reels and I try to do a lot of teaching moments on Instagram. I like to use it as my platform. And same as for Facebook. I don't really go onto Facebook that often, but it's Yael AcuWellness on Instagram, on LinkedIn, on Facebook, my website. And then it's just yaelacuwellness@gmail.com. If you want to email me, please, any questions, any topics that anybody wants to ever talk to me. I don't know if you can hear it through my voice, but I love talking anything Chinese medicine or health or wellness anytime.
Yeah.
So
So even healthcare providers who might want to connect with you can reach out to
for
you as well.
sure, for sure. And if you're in Westchester and you wanted to come in and check my practice out. So within the next few months, I'm birthing my third child, or I guess it's my fourth child. My first child was Yael Aki Wellness, and then I have my two amazing children. But I am now birthing Yala Wellness. I'm in the process of creating a website and a brand, and hopefully this will be the beginning of a shift in starting in Westchester County in New York and beyond. So I would love for you to come look at it and join it and be a part of it. And I'm creating this for the community. This is not just my thing. I really want it to be part of the community.
I love the double meaning of yalla too, because as you were saying, and when I lived in Bahrain, we heard this all the time is yalla, yalla, which means like, let's go, let's go.
Let's
So there's
go.
this like, come on, people, let's do this together energy behind it. And you are
Yes,
loved always is such a beautiful way of interpreting that. Yeah, let's go. Let's all do this for ourselves and each other is like, get on this. Let's
yes,
get this community going of people who can self-love in a way that ripples out. Self-love,
100%.
not like self-centered self-love, but self-love as in
No.
healing energy, like healing energy, and we come together and we support each other and move
So,
this thing
wha
forward.
one last story about self-love. A few months ago, I was in my kitchen and I said to my son, "Oh, you know what? You are so lucky. You have the best mommy. I love myself. I love being your mommy and I love myself." And he goes, "Mommy, stop it. You're being conceited." Now, this is my just turned 7-year-old. And the first thought in my mind is, how did he even learn the word conceited? But, and why would he say, but he got very upset about it. And I had a realization that somewhere in our society, in our world, it has been looked down upon to love yourself and to respect yourself and to give yourself praise and to be proud of yourself. It's almost looked at as conceited or self-centered or you need to be modest, and we're taught from as a young age, don't boast about yourself, don't speak too highly about yourself. Why? We have to stop that. We have to stop saying things like that. We have to love ourselves. Be proud of who you are. Love every part of you. Yes, you are the best mom and you are the best. Yes, because you are doing your best. And in your world, you are the best, right? And so when I say that about myself, I'm just speaking at how proud I am of me. I'm not saying that I'm better than anybody else. I just am proud and I love myself. Doesn't mean that I think I'm better, right? So I would love to see that change for people and for more people to just scream out from the rooftops, "I love myself and I love everything about myself," you know? That was my little 7-year-old son's story.
I love it. Thank you for sharing that. Are you open to doing a little rapid fire?
Yes,
And you
let's
can
go.
say pass. Okay, you can say pass to anything. What's the best
Okay.
advice you've ever received?
Oh, no. Be yourself.
What's the worst advice you've ever received?
Don't trust anybody.
What book or show has your attention right now?
I love shrinking. I'm obsessed with it.
Where is that? What platform? I've never heard of it.
Is shrinking Hulu or Netflix? I don't know. Apple. Netflix. Sorry, it's on Apple. It's a great show. Make you laugh out loud.
What is the most mystical thing about you?
Um, I can feel people in a way that I think goes beyond human essence. I can read people's emotions and I can feel pain. I can feel other people's emotions. I can tap into that.
What is one thing you thought when you started, meaning started acupuncture Chinese medicine, that is different now?
When I started, I thought I can treat anything and that I had the power. And what I realize now is that it really takes the patient wanting to change and wanting to improve. And despite what I do, the power is really in the patient. When I started, I thought the power was in me.
What is challenging you these days?
So much is challenging me these days. On a worldwide, the lack of love and respect towards others. On a practical, like my practice side, what's challenging me is finding the perfect location and destination of this incredible wellness center that will be coming soon. And on a personal level, I heard this on Instagram and it's been sticking with me. And this is the thing that's challenging me most about being a mother is that I never get to say goodbye to the stages that just passed, you know? And that's the thing that I cry about, I miss the baby stage so much and the toddler stage and then the little pitter patters of the feet. And life is so busy and life keeps going and I just never get to say goodbye to that version of my children.
Oh, that's gonna make me cry because that
I
hits
know
home
it's
so
hard.
much.
It's
Yeah,
hard.
yeah.
It's
It's
a
so
hard one.
real. It's very, very real.
Yeah.
Well, who or what inspires you?
I feel like so many things inspire me. My children inspire me. My community inspires me. I just want to see things better. I just have this utopian vision that the world can be full of love and compassion and everyone takes care of themselves and I want to see that. So my patients inspire me, my family inspires me. Um but I have to say my work ethic and my desire to never give up, I think I got that from my dad. Thanks, Dad.
Finish the sentence. Be the type of person who.
Be the type of person who is proud of your actions at the end of the day.
Thank you. And this is always gonna be the last question. What is your one wish for healthcare?
Ugh, my one wish for healthcare is that it turns into a more holistic and loving system. I think it's just so broken and bureaucratic and and I see the insurance companies have just destroyed it, pharmaceutical companies have destroyed it. I just feel like there's people are so desperate for a connection with their healthcare practitioners. People are so desperate to feel heard, to feel love, to feel connection, to I kind of want and this is not good for my business, but I feel like it should just be like we should be living in villages where all doctors are just helping you, patients are just part of the community. There are no everyone's a patient. Everyone, goes to that village healer. I know that that's not the case, and that won't ever be the case, but maybe more love and compassion and more empathy in healthcare.
Well, thank you so, so much. I so appreciate you sharing your time, your light, your wisdom with us today. And I know this will ripple out and touch someone else's heart. So I'm so grateful for you.
Oh, I'm so grateful for you too. This was such a pleasure. It's so great to see you. You are also a massive, bright, shining star, and I feel honored to be on this journey with you.
Thank you. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share it with someone who would appreciate it. Your support helps create positive ripples in our communities. Do you have questions for the guest or want to explore more? Visit yinspiredpod.com and it will take you to Substack where Yinspired lives. With your free subscription, you'll receive every new episode plus access to transcripts, show notes, resources, and the opportunity to join the discussion. From my heart to yours, create a day you love.